Welcome, everyone. Today we are discussing a critical shift in how we handle industrial incidents. Root cause analysis without blame. Our goal today isn't to find a scapegoat, but to master a field-tested playbook for maintenance and safety leaders. We will focus on how to preserve evidence, explain the true nature of the system, and ultimately control recurrence to ensure these events never happen again. We begin with a hard truth. The costliest root cause is the one you have already decided upon before the investigation even starts. If an investigation concludes by naming a person, the room might feel satisfied, but the plant remains exactly as dangerous as it was before. True investigation only begins when we set aside our certainty and start looking for the systemic gaps. To keep our investigations honest, we use an operating model built on 5 core verbs. We start by preserving the scene and volatile data. We then move to explaining the event line and fail barriers. Next, we control the risk with design-based actions, not just awareness. We ensure someone is assigned to own the change. And finally, we verify that the risk has actually been reduced. While blame asks who carries the shame, RCA asks what must change. To ground these concepts, let's look at a landmark case: the 2005 BP Texas City disaster. On the surface, it looked like a sequence of operator errors, but a real investigation revealed deep organizational causes that were invisible at first glance. The incident occurred during the restart of an isomerization unit. A raffinate splitter flooded and overpressurized, leading to a massive vapor cloud explosion. The human toll was devastating: 15 lives lost and 180 injured. While the physical sequence was clear, the conditions that made this tragedy almost inevitable were far more complex than a simple mistake. If the investigation had stopped at operator error, the report would have simply named a few people and specific actions they took during a difficult restart. However, the plant would have kept its known instrument problems, its outdated procedures, its culture of fatigue, and its hazardous trailer siting. Naming the person leaves the hazards untouched. The evidence changed the story entirely. 3 key facts made be more careful: an indefensible solution. First, the operator had worked 29 consecutive 12-hour shifts, making fatigue a critical factor. Second, startup proceeded despite incomplete alarm checks. And third, all 15 fatalities occurred in temporary trailers sited too close to the unit for mere convenience. These are systemic issues, not individual ones. This brings us to the concept of causal layers. A strong RCA follows the path from the physical equipment, through the work processes and organizational culture, all the way up to risk governance. A causal factor is only valuable to us if controlling it actually changes the probability or the consequence of it happening again. We are now going to view a reconstruction by the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. As you watch, I want you to focus on barrier failures. Don't look for the person nearest the event. Instead, look for the moments where prevention, detection, or mitigation could have interrupted the escalation but didn't. Now let's talk about the first hour after an incident. Evidence decays much faster than a report can be approved. We must design our response so that safety, stabilization, and preservation can coexist simultaneously. The first 24 hours determine the quality of the entire investigation. In the first 15 minutes, you care for people and stabilize hazards. Within the hour, you protect volatile data. By the 4-hour mark, you should be exporting digital records. The clock starts the moment the event happens, not when the investigation team finally arrives on site. Scene control is about prioritizing safety without erasing history. You can make a scene safe while still preserving its as-found condition. This involves treating people with dignity, controlling energy, and most importantly, logging every single safety-driven change made to the environment after the event. We rely on 4 converging evidence streams. No single source, especially human memory, should be the sole basis for a conclusion. We look at physical evidence, digital data like alarm logs, documents like procedures, and finally, people's observations. Where these 4 streams meet, we find a truth. When documenting the scene, always photograph context before detail. Start with wide shots to establish the scene. Move to relationship shots to show how objects relate, and finally capture the detail of damage or settings. Always include a scale and a location log, so the photo remains useful months later. Digital evidence is incredibly volatile. You must export DCS logs, STS audit trails, and CMMS history immediately. Remember, screenshots are not enough. You need the native files, time zones, and clock drift data to ensure the dataset is accurate and defensible. For physical evidence, treat every movement as a change to the story. Identify, photograph, and tag every component. Most importantly, do not clean, adjust, or power up any equipment until the evidence custodian authorizes it. You wouldn't want to accidentally wash away the very clue that explains the failure. When talking to witnesses, your goal is to ask, "Show me what you saw," not "Why did you do that?" We want to know where they were, what they noticed changing, and what they expected to happen next. This reduces defensiveness and yields more accurate observations. Interview discipline is about creating psychological safety. Interview people individually and promptly. Avoid leading questions or group interviews that can cause narrative drift. Most importantly, never let a supervisor or a disciplinary threat be present, as this will almost certainly suppress the candor we need. Finally, keep your evidence discipline visible. Use an evidence board to separate fact from inferences, conflicts, and gaps. Just because an inference appears in a draft report doesn't make it fact. Keeping these separate ensures the final story is built on solid ground. Once we have the evidence, we move to the explain phase. Our goal here isn't to force a single root cause, but to produce a defensible explanation of the events, conditions, and fail barriers that allowed the incident to occur. We start by building a verified event line. Events are actions or changes in time. At this stage, we resist the urge to ask why. We simply agree on the sequence, the timestamps, and the evidence references first. It's about establishing the what before the why. Once the what is clear, we add conditions and fail barriers. Conditions explain the context, like an unclear alarm criterion or a missing alignment record. These explain how the escalation remained possible. Every condition you add must be backed by an evidence reference. A causal claim must survive 4 tests. Is there evidence to support it? If this factor were removed, would the outcome change? Can the organization actually influence it? And finally, does this condition exist elsewhere in the plant? If it doesn't pass these, it's not a valid root cause. We often use the 5 whys, but remember, it's a prompt, not a proof. Its weakness is that it forces a complex system into a single linear chain. Instead, try a systems inquiry where you ask why in multiple directions, looking at foundations, tools, and criteria simultaneously. Barrier analysis is one of our most powerful tools. We ask what should have interrupted the escalation at 5 stages: prevention, detection, control, mitigation, and recovery. For every barrier, we must ask, was it effective? Was it even maintained? When the cause is obscure, use change analysis. Compare the successful normal condition to the event condition across people, equipment, materials, and environment. A difference is a lead, not necessarily a cause, but it tells you exactly where to look deeper. When looking at human performance, we must ask what shaped the action. Was it the task design, the organizational staffing levels, or individual factors like fatigue? We look at the job, the organization, and the individual to understand the context of the decision. The language we use changes the analysis. We should replace stopping labels like operator error with investigable questions. Instead of saying someone lacked safety awareness, ask what information was available to them at the decision point. This shifts the focus from the person to the system. Investigators must be aware of 4 biases. Hindsight bias, which makes everything look obvious after the fact. Outcome bias, where we judge a situation based on its severity. Confirmation bias, where we only look for evidence that fits our first theory. And attribution bias, where we blame character instead of context. Let's look at a rotating equipment example. A weak RCA says the fitter failed to align the pump, and the action is just to retrain them. This changes nothing in the system, and the pump will likely fail again for the same reasons. A systemic RCA, however, follows the failure to controllable practices. It identifies soft foot, pipe strain, and torque issues. The corrective actions then focus on foundation limits, calibrated tools, and condition reviews. Now, you've fixed the installation system, not just the installer. We now move to the control and ownership phase. A cause is only useful if it leads to a systemic change, and that change is only useful if we prove it actually works. We prioritize actions based on their strength. Training and procedures are the weakest controls because they rely on sustained human performance. We should strive for stronger controls like engineering interlocks, substitution of materials, or designing the hazard out of the system entirely. Every corrective action needs quality fields, a clear link to a cause, a specific owner, a due date, a tangible deliverable, and acceptance criteria. If it has no budget or verifier, it's just a recommendation, not a commitment. Ownership should be assigned to the system. We need a sponsor to remove constraints, a system owner to ensure the fix is applied site-wide, an action owner to deliver the change, and an independent verifier to confirm it works. The workforce then tests the workability of the new solution. We must distinguish between completion and effectiveness. Completion asks if the tool was installed. Effectiveness asks if the tool actually performs under realistic demand. We aren't done when the paperwork is signed. We're done when the risk is measurably reduced. Here is an example of a recurrence control plan. We track leading indicators like alignment records and lagging indicators like repeat seal failures. We then review the data at 30 and 90 days to decide if the action was truly effective or if we need to reopen the investigation. It's important to note that blame-free does not mean accountability-free. We keep learning reviews and conduct reviews separate. The learning review explains the event to prevent recurrence, while the conduct review addresses policy obligations. Keeping them separate protects the integrity of the fact-finding process. We should always match the rigor of the investigation to the potential consequence. A minor, reversible event might only need a rapid learning review, but a fatality or major release requires a formal, independent investigation with an evidence custodian. If you want to implement this, here is a 90-day roadmap. Start by setting your policies and kits in the first month. Pilot real RCAs in the second month. By the third month, you should be proving effectiveness and sharing lessons across the entire organization. Here is a field checklist to use after any serious event. Before your first meeting ends, ensure you can answer these 10 questions, ranging from is everyone safe to how will we prove the controls worked? It keeps the team focused on the right priorities from the start. Before any report is approved, it must pass through this quality gate. Is every claim traceable to evidence? Were rival theories tested? Is the analysis systemic? Are the actions linked to causes? Are owners explicit? And are the results verifiable? If not, the report isn't ready. In summary, remember this. Accountability assigns ownership of the fix, while blame only assigns shame for the outcome. By focusing on preserving, explaining, controlling, owning, and verifying, we ensure a safer future for everyone. For those who wish to dive deeper, these are the primary guidance documents and official sources used to build this presentation, including standards from OSHA, the HSE, and the CSB. Finally, credit is given here to the official videos and licensed media that provided the visual evidence for our case studies today. All sources are retained for your reference. Thank you for your time and your commitment to a safer workplace.